1975. The Iron Curtain sits, dividing the continent of Europe into two camps. On the western side, you can do next to no wrong, the sun beams down on you, your family are happy, and every now and then you take your son to watch the local rally racing. Meanwhile, on the eastern side, your request for a car has been ongoing for the last 4 years, your wife has been standing in line for bread since 3:20 AM, and your neighbours are reporting you to the local constabulary because they are jealous of your possessions. And, you know, you could be a Western spy. Despite what it was like to live in the Soviet Union, even the party members thought that the USSR could use some motorsport. While the cars produced in the Soviet Union were downright pedestrian in comparison to those from the West, this doesn't mean that they couldn't go racing. Hey, at least it meant they had less parts to remove while preparing the cars. As you may have guessed, this video is about some of those cars. While nowhere near as successful as their decadent Western rivals, the ingenuity of the designers, sometimes quite extreme and archaic, showed that these people had a desire to make do with what they had and make their nations proud. Anyways, without further yapping, I present to you the People's Soviet Rally Cars. We'll start with a car from the motherland, the Lada 2105. The Soviet copy of the Fiat 124. As the most recognisable car from the Eastern Bloc, it shouldn't surprise you that the 2105 was developed into a rally car. The company responsible for these conversions was VFTS, also known as the Vilnius Factory of Vehicles, and in Russian this would have been the Vilniuskaya Fabryka Transportnych Sredstw. I don't know, my Russian is not very good. The original engine was heavily reworked by VFTS, resulting in a high-revving, 8-valve single overhead cam, 1.6 litre 4-cylinder. Running off 2 Weber carburetors, at its peak the engine could put out about 160 horsepower, connected to a 4-speed gearbox. Along with significant changes to the bodywork, brakes and suspension, the VFTS was homologated on the 2nd of October 1982 for Group B. Information on its actual racing career is very difficult to get a hold of. However, one we do know of is the Thousand Lakes Rally of 1985, where the VFTS claimed the top 6 places in its class. VFTS built about 30 original examples, and some of them are still racing to this day, as you can see in this video from Hungary. In my opinion, a really cool car, and a really good way to start this video. We now move to Czechoslovakia, where we have 2 cars to feature in this video, and the first one has its roots in the Skoda 110. Now, Skoda were no strangers to motorsport. They had been racing cars since 1906 with this Voiturette A, and the first car we're going to talk about from Czechoslovakia was actually one of many cars that Skoda raced in rallying. The Skoda 130 RS is a wonderful looking coupe, from some angles even bearing some reminiscence to the VW Carmen Ghia. Behind the rear axle was a 1.3 litre overhead valve 4-cylinder engine, kind of like a Soviet Porsche 911. The car was officially homologated on the 2nd of July 1976 for Group 2 rallying. Being in Group 2 meant that it was in a lower class than the usual suspects of the time, like the Lancia Stratos, Fiat 131 Abarth, or the Mark II Ford Escort. Those cars were in Group 4. Back to the little Skoda, despite only producing 140 horsepower at its peak, because the body was made from aluminium and fiberglass, it was very light, just 720 kilos. With the engine placement over the rear axle, handling was fantastic, especially on tarmac stages. The car was in fact so good that at the 1977 Monte Carlo Rally, the 2 factory team Skodas took a 1-2 finish in their class. Also, can we just get back to that engine, because and the 130 RS wasn't just fast on the rally stages, because Skoda also campaigned this car in the European Touring Car Championship, where in 1981, Skoda managed to win the entire championship, beating the likes of BMW in the process. As I've already said before, I am a huge fan of this car's looks. It could even pass for a Western car, and it's things like this, along with its pace, that to me make it prove that despite the awful conditions those people lived in, They were determined to make their mark in the motorsport history, and God bless those engineers. And what you just saw there was the car that replaced the 130 RS. Homologated in January 1985, the Skoda 130 LR was the last rear-engine racing car made by Skoda. It carried over the engine from the 130 RS, but this time with a 5-speed gearbox. The 130 LR competed in Group B in Class B9. This meant that it was in a lower class than the cars that we remember best for Group B, like the Ford RS200, Audi Quattro, Peugeot 205 T16, Lancia Delta S4, and all the others. Like with every car on this list, obtaining information about results is very difficult. However, for this car, we have two results that we can look at. The first being the 1985 Rally of Britain, where the leading 130 LR managed an overall finish of 15th place. Not bad. The second is the highly controversial San Remo Rally of 1986, where the leading Skoda managed an overall finish of 6th place. And even better, the second car made its way to 9th, meaning the team had a double points finish. Oh, and as you saw by the results, the leading car managed to beat an Opel Manta 400, which has more than double the Skoda's horsepower. The 130 LR was a very capable machine. However, its international career didn't last very long. And it's all because of what happened at the Tour de Corsa in 1986. On the 2nd of May 1986, driver Henri Toivonen and his co-driver Sergio Cresto in their Lancia Delta S4 lost control while approaching a corner on one of the stages of Corsica. The car slid off the road into a ravine and upon impacting a tree burst into flames. Unfortunately, due to the remote location of where they crashed, both Henri and Sergio perished in the blazing Lancia. Due to their unfortunate deaths, the then president of the FIA, Jean-Marie Balestri, immediately banned Group B after the end of the 1986 season. The events of May the 2nd are remembered even to this day as one of the biggest tragedies in the history of rally. With that out of the way, let's move on to this video's final two cars. Our final two cars hail from my homeland, Poland. And these two cars are nothing like the previous ones. Why? Because they saw virtually no success. The FSO Polonez 2000 Rally was homologated on the 1st of January 1979. It actually featured quite a lot of advancements for a communist car. For example, the front brakes came from a Porsche 911? I genuinely have no clue how they got their hands on that. As for the engine, it was a 2-litre Fiat 4-cylinder, which curiously had dual overhead cams but only 8 valves. Depending on the type of fueling, be it either carburetors or mechanical fuel injection, this engine put out between 170 to 210 horsepower at the end of the car's career. The car competed in Group 2, Group 4 and Group B. Its first international outing was in 1979. Of these international outings, we know that the Polonez finished at least one of them, because at the 1980 Rally of Portugal, the team managed an overall finish of 10th, which means they scored 2 points. But that's as good as it would get. Despite competing until the end of the 80s, FSO never scored another World Championship point. Sadly, FSO didn't really have enough money to ever develop the car. And to compound the misery, when FSO stopped all motorsport activities in the 90s, every example of the 2000 Rally was disassembled for parts. Picture the scene. It's 1978. You live in a relatively quiet suburb of Warsaw. And suddenly, the relative peace of the morning is broken by this. This was in fact so loud that your neighbour calls the police to, quote, silence that horrific noise. What I described there is what happened when our final car, the FSO Polonez 2500 Racing was started for the first time. The 2500 Racing is an absolute klutz of a car. Its story begun when the son of the Polish premier at the time, Andrzej Jaroszewicz, crashed his Lancia Stratos in the finale of the European Rally Championship. Since the car was beyond repair, Jaroszewicz took the remains of the Lancia to the OBRSO, which in Polish stands for Ośrodek Badawczo-Rozwojowy Samochodów Osobowych. In English, this roughly translates as the Research Office for Passenger Cars. What they created is nothing short of madness. Their starting point was the recently launched FSO Polonez, into which the engineers then shoehorned the drivetrain of the Lancia straight into the back of it. The usual 1.5 litre Fiat engine which sat in the front was completely thrown out. After some modifications to the exhaust, the end result was a 2.4 litre V6, producing about 280 horsepower driving the rear wheels. 0 to 60 was dealt with in under 6 seconds, and the top speed was 142 miles an hour. The Polonez chassis, not designed for this kind of power, would flex under heavy acceleration or turning. Upon completion of the project, the car was given absolutely no testing of any sort, and was sent headfirst to its debut event. The car was so unstable to drive that on debut, Jaroszewicz, despite spinning the car 3 times, still won the event. The car was used at various national events between 1978 and when it was retired in 1985. If we're completely honest, its results are meaningless because it was just a one-off prototype. The 2500 Racing, also known as the Strato Polonez, may just take the cake as the most insane car to come from behind the Iron Curtain, essentially being a Polonez with a Stratos drivetrain shoehorned into it. When you think about it, that's kind of like a Soviet Renault Clio V6, except built in a shed. Woo! And that wraps up our countdown of Soviet rally cars. This is a video that I've thought about making for a while, so I'm glad I finally got the chance. It's really interesting to think that these cars were created while these people were ruled by such a horrible ideology. The simple fact that the creators' creativity wasn't curbed is quite surprising. Either way, like last time, thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, be sure to leave it a like, comment your favourite car from this video, and be sure to subscribe because I've got plenty more videos coming. And if you enjoy all things cars, I'm certain you will not want to miss them. Anyway, I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace!